In the last Dark Deception video, we took a trip through the main game, exploring each of the levels and monsters, and I shared some strategies, tips, and fun glitches we often use in speedruns of the game. But now it's time to talk about the lore. You remember that girl, the clever one that's not a fast runner? Yeah, it's very likely that she is your wife Elise, and also the one known as E who's been leaving the secret notes scattered throughout each of the levels. You have been collecting those, right? Often found in secret rooms, you can find a note from E documenting her own journey through each of the levels as she follows Malik, after she refuses to help Pierce, faking her death, leaving the tablet behind. These give us insight into who each of the denizens of the Dark Realm were in their past lives, and which layer of hell each level may represent. Because she just kinda has a sixth sense for the lore apparently. Like a female MacPat. The murder monkeys are the souls of, well, murderers, symbolising violence. Agatha, the embodiment of child suffering, being a child sacrifice herself and representing their collective wrath. The Gold Watchers, after losing their lives in an unfortunate schmelting accident, unsurprisingly representing greed. The Duckies, born from liars, deceivers, and the not-so-girl-boss gaslighters, these represent fraud. The Clowns, aka the average Twitter user, symbolic of heresy with a tendency to provoke and create discourse purely for amusement. The Nurses, misandrists who use the lust they symbolise as a means to lure and kill cis white male scum. The Joy Gang, robots possibly inhabited by the souls of slaughtered animals who, without human consciousness, run on base desires and animalistic instincts, which appears to symbolise gluttony in various forms, with Lucky being obsessed with victory, Penny with love, and Hangry with food. Lastly, Mama Bear is a being born from an amalgamation of abusive parenting, and if this level is included in the 9 Circles of Hell, it would represent treachery through betrayal of the love and trust of their own children. With Bierce's ballroom also likely representing its own Circle of Hell being Limbo, this theory would already cover all 9 Circles of Hell, but there are 2 main levels remaining that we have yet to see in Chapter 5. However, the Circles of Hell theory may still hold true despite this, because I believe there is a possibility that each of the 9 layers is tied to a ring piece, meaning Barely Buried and Prison Panic would not be included in the 9 Circles of Hell in that case, as both of these levels do not feature their own ring piece to collect, with Malik likely holding on to the 10th final ring piece we need to collect himself. If this 9 Circles of Hell theory is correct, then that means the demonic power the Riddle of Heaven holds is the manifestation of all sin combined. Other notes can often be found alongside these. These include newspapers, medical documents, and writings by Doug himself amongst other things. You also get one of Bierce's diary entries for each level you S-rank. All of this gives us a lot of hints to the overall story of the game. But if you wanted to figure it out for yourself, I doubt you'd be watching this video. So here's a handy-dandy timeline for what we currently believe is the events leading up to the gameplay of Dark Deception. Somewhere around the 1920s or 1930s, Helen Bierce moves to Hollywood in pursuit of the American dream, wanting to become a famous movie star. Shortly after, she married a man named Edgar, not out of love but for his money and connections. Edgar frequently holds fake satanic ritual parties, which is where Bierce meets a man named Victor, who I personally believe is an agent of Malik's. Like that one YouTube comment you always find, apparently he's an expert on the subject and just has to let everybody know about it, and he's amused at how crappy Edgar's imitations of satanic rituals are. Thus, like some kind of black magic NTR, Victor starts showing Bierce what a real satanic ritual looks like, which Edgar could never hope to give to her. By sacrificing Agatha, the maid's daughter, Bierce summons Malik and he grants her wish of becoming a movie star in exchange for her soul in 7 years and a day. And once the deed was done, Victor disappeared, never to be seen again. With the ritual successful, Edgar was no longer of any use to Bierce, so she did what any sane person would do, and slowly poisoned him over the course of 6 months until he died, then used the inherited money from this Black Widow scheme to fund her search for a way to cheat Malik out of his deal. The Riddle of Heaven. Years pass, and with her time now running out, Bierce grows increasingly anxious, but she does manage to acquire the Riddle of Heaven. She performs a ritual to try and harness Malik's dark powers from the ring, in an attempt to fight back against him and hopefully get rid of him for good. But Malik was able to shatter the ring into 10 pieces, scattering them across the various circles of hell and appointing his monsters to guard them. However, one piece binded itself to Bierce's soul, allowing her to retain some of Malik's power and creating a pocket dimension out of her ballroom, which lies in between life and death, Limbo, where she was able to escape to. Now trapped in purgatory, Malik is unable to take her soul, But Bierce also can't recomplete the ring without venturing into Malik's realms, facing his minions and her own worst nightmares, creating the most metal Mexican standoff in history. And so she waits, as every soul that is walking the line between life and death ends up in her ballroom, where Bierce is more than willing to deceive them into helping her try to recover the ring pieces, typically resulting in their horrifying death shortly after. So it's kind of like Death Parade, except way more unfair. Years later in 1955, Doug Hauser is born, and shortly after his father abandons his family, leaving Doug's mother to raise him alone. Despite this, she really did love Doug, buying him a teddy bear for his 5th birthday to keep him company while she was constantly working. But 3 years later, as if the kid didn't have it bad enough living without a parental figure ever at home to spend time with him, the toll of raising a kid alone started to affect Doug's mother. She started to see the man who left her through Doug, and took out that anger on him, locking him in a closet as a punishment and further making him suffer as she did throughout the remainder of his childhood. Around 1979, Doug and Elise get married, and shortly after, Tammy, their daughter, is born. Almost 2 years later, in October of 1981, Elise starts to question why she never met Doug's mother, as she was not present for the wedding, birth of Tammy, or even so much as mentioned by Doug, who at this time just acquired his high-profile lawyer job, where he would go on to meet his mistress along with many other wealthy and powerful people, who would fuel his mind with greed and the ideas that he does not need his wife and kid, that they're simply a burden on him and his wealth, likely advising Doug towards many of his sinful actions going forwards and justifying them to him, sounding like Palpatine in Star Wars Episode 3. Should I kill my wife and kid, guys? Do it. From this point on, Doug would start to prioritize his career, rich friends, and his mistress over his family. Meanwhile, Elise secretly finds out Doug's mother's address and makes plans to go see her to find out why Doug has been so secretive about her. Interestingly, the actual image of the note this information comes from tells a slightly different story that was likely retconned, but gives us a good idea of how that meeting went. Here's a hint: not well. It says how Doug's mother refused to talk about him and instead was obsessed with Elise, showing jealousy at her beauty and youth and calling her stupid for ever marrying Doug and warning her to not have children with him. As time progresses, Elise suffers with bipolar disorder, although it's unclear whether this was pre-existing or developed during her time with Doug. And likely as a byproduct of this, she develops a drug addiction, and the combination of the two would often cause her to act impulsively and violently. Beginning in 1988, at age 8, Tammy began to show signs of early bipolar disorder as well, likely inherited from Elise, but could also be partially attributed to her father's absence in her life, which was the cause for many arguments and fights between Doug and Elise throughout their 12 years of marriage. By 1991, Doug had decided he had had enough. He could only see Elise and Tammy as defective due to their mental disorders and wished to dispose of them. So he started to concoct a plan to use his power and wealth to leave his current life behind and start over. Under the guise of an out-of-town conference, Doug meets with one of his secretaries, whom he's been secretly dating and showering with gifts, to assure her that he's going to take care of Elise soon, so that they can be together. Then, on February 28th, 1992, Elise and Tammy were involved in a traffic collision which claimed both of their lives as well as 2 others, when it appears their car collided with another and was then subsequently hit by a third car, sending theirs into the river below. While the specifics of the accident aren't confirmed, it is suspected that Elise had overdosed on drugs at the time, contributing to its cause, and it's heavily implied that this was because Doug had switched out her pills with a higher dose, or perhaps others like sleeping pills, as part of his plan to get rid of Elise. Although it appears killing her in this way was not part of the plan, and he definitely didn't plan for Tammy to be involved. Also, a not so fun fact for you, it is likely that while Elise died on impact in the crash, Tammy may have still been alive in the burning vehicle as it crashed into the water, judging from this secret drawing in Elementary Evil, seemingly drawn by Tammy herself. Meaning if she didn't burn to death, she would have drowned. Both rated pretty high on the not fun ways to die list. So yeah, I can understand why she'd be so pissed at Doug. You'd think the Phantom Thieves got him the way Doug has a change of heart as a result of this, but no, this is just good old-fashioned guilt and regret, baby. Doug quickly spirals into madness, having recurring nightmares and hallucinating seeing Elise and Tammy in public. He would go on to join a religious group, go to therapy, and perform charity acts in hopes to atone, but failed to find solace in any of them. His debauchery would also catch up to him, as he is charged for sexual misconduct and subsequently arrested after turning himself in. The timing of these charges are suspicious, possibly hinting at the idea that Doug's wealthy quote-unquote friends may have used his current vulnerability as a means to throw him under the bus, whether to further their own wealth, simply protect themselves by cutting ties with him, or maybe purely for their own entertainment, to laugh at Doug for how little he considered the consequences of his actions. Either way, his so-called friends were conveniently absent the whole time. Now Doug had truly lost everything. His wife and kid are dead, and now he didn't even have his money and power he once had either. But it would appear that hitting rock bottom still wasn't enough to atone for his sins, and Karma decided to come in with a steel chair called Retribution because an undetermined amount of time later, Doug is diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. Now running out of time, he researches into black magic in one last desperate attempt to make amends for the things he's done, and performs a blood ritual from his hospital bed. Meanwhile, it appears that after the accident, Elise found her way to Beerce's ballroom, and Tammy also ended up in the Dark Realm. Although it's unclear exactly where, it is highly possible she was sent to Elementary Evil, and met Agatha, as she fits the requirements for Wrath, being an innocent child that was forced to suffer an unjust fate and die horribly. We also see a drawing from Tammy herself here giving further evidence she's been here. Between her arriving in the Dark Realm and ending up as Nalvi from Zelda in Barely Buried, it's currently unknown what happened to her. At the same time, devoid of any memories, Elise, thinking she just got inducted into the Men in Black, starts referring to herself as simply E. She doesn't trust Beerce and refuses to work with her, faking her death at the hands of the murder monkeys and leaving the tablet behind, and discovering she has the ability to look into the souls of the monsters for very convenient lore reasons. She's able to find one of Malik's relics and uses its power to move between realms instead of collecting the ring pieces, because who would possibly be suicidal enough to even try that? She can only travel to the places Malik has passed through, however, meaning she is unintentionally following him through the Dark Realms. Or maybe he's leading her through these realms intentionally. Who knows, but she ends up in Elementary Evil and has an encounter with Agatha before using the relic to jump through to Deadly Decadence. At some point after the manor, she jumps to a dollhouse, which is a realm we don't see in the main game. After the dollhouse, she winds up in the Stranger Sewers, then onto Crazy Carnival, and here she notices the relic is slowly consuming her soul as she uses it. Which I'm sure is nothing to be concerned about. I bet my doctor would recommend to take some ibuprofen and just get some rest. Oh yeah, British healthcare! From the circus, E jumps to another level we do not see as Doug, a cathedral, but it's okay because apparently nothing of interest happened there, judging from her note after she jumps to torment therapy. This is one of the more interesting notes as it tells us how hospitable the Reaper nurses are towards E, due to her being female but also because E's soul fits this realm, implying E has a severe hatred for men. Gee, can't possibly imagine why though. After trying to look for answers in the one safe haven she found, the Reaper nurses turn on her, forcing her to jump and ending up in Mascot Mayhem. E didn't listen to the hit song Bad Rabbit, so she didn't know don't mess with the Joy Joy gang, and has a sick anime fight with the notorious PIG. After getting severely yamchered, she does her best impression of a Kingdom Hearts opening, falling deep into the darkness of the water below, until a voice calls out to her. Malik offers to help her and awakens some of her memories in the process. I wonder if this is what Malik meant when he tells Doug he had more important things to take care of when asked where he was during torment therapy. After jumping to Belly Buried, she starts to regain a few more memories, and she realises she may not have been the greatest mother, when she starts finding herself drawn towards the demon born from abusive parenting. We don't know yet where E travels to after this, but we do know that she will play a vital role in the next chapter, along with Tammy as well. And that's all we know about the lore so far. At some point during E's journey, Doug was successful in his blood ritual, awakening in Beerce's ballroom, and the rest of the events of the timeline that occur from here on are what we play through in the game. If you need an abridged summary for those events, check out my previous video on Dark Deception, or play through the game yourself, and then you're all set ready for whenever Chapter 5 releases. And watch as all the existing lore gets retconned, making this video completely redundant. Yay! One last interesting thing of note that I didn't want to include in the timeline, but it's important to mention. According to Beerce, the nightmares are supposed to mold to each individual's fears. For example, she saw spiders and her ex-husband naked wearing a diaper. And yet, Elise or E supposedly visits and encounters all the same enemies and locations that Doug visits, which seems to contradict this idea. I wanted to bring that up because it seems significant so long as it isn't just an oversight to allow us some extra background info on the enemies, which I fear it might be and will likely be changed in some way for Chapter 5 anyway. But if you have any theories of your own for why this is, I'd love to hear them in the comments. But yeah, I'm glad I finally got around to making these videos. Well, it was only meant to be one initially, but then the script got a little out of hand. I'd had this idea of recounting the game and its lore ready for Chapter 5 since my last FNAF Theory video as something I wanted to make whilst waiting for Help Wanted 2 to release, and I finally got the time and motivation to actually make it. Which is good because Chapter 5 still somehow hasn't been released, and I can't make a video on Help Wanted 2 because I can't play the damn thing without VR. But anyways, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, make sure to do all those things YouTube likes you to do for content you enjoy. And if you want to see more of me, I stream most weekdays here on this channel at 8 PM UK time. With the release of these videos, I plan to get back into speedrunning Dark Deception's various categories, maybe do some challenge runs, and even venture into Monsters and Mortals, which I've yet to try at all. So look out for those streams if you enjoy this game. I'll be waiting, mortal!